Joining us now, Congressman from Salem, 9th District, Virginia, Southwest Virginia, Republican, Morgan Griffith. Congressman, great to have you.
Great to be with you this morning.
Now, I just want to, if I may, share with our listeners, I had the opportunity to have breakfast with the congressman on Friday at his favorite place in Salem, and we had a fabulous time and got to learn a little bit more about your family, got to spend a little time with your wife, Hillary, and I want to tell you how much I appreciated the time, sir.
Well, it was great to visit and always good to catch up.
Okay, let's go right, if we can, Congressman, to the Iranian situation. This deal now, there's a deadline at the end of March. I'm going to play a clip in a couple of minutes by Secretary of State John Kerry, but forget the letter that the Republicans in the Senate sent to Iran. Forget that. Tell our audience what is troubling you from what you've seen about this deal.
Well, first off, I don't know that we can trust the Iranians. You know, ever since they took over from the Shah and captured Americans and held them there for months in the embassy, they have sworn that they wanted to see, the great Satan, United States, defeated. And what better way to do that than to acquire nuclear weapons? If they have to wait a few years more, then they wait a few years more. But if we put them on a path where they can, with world acquiescence, world approval, get a weapon, they're going to do it in a heartbeat. They're going to do it if they can do it without the world's approval. But we have been hurting their economy with sanctions and so forth, and it looks like the president wants to abandon a policy which has truly brought the Iranians to a point where they need to be at the negotiating table. And then we're going to, say, they're willing to sit down, let's give them everything they want. Well, that's not the point of bringing them to the negotiating table. The point of putting sanctions on them, which were approved by Congress and need to be unapproved by Congress, not by a pen and a phone with the president. But the point of that was to make sure that they never get a weapon, not just to delay them getting a weapon. And
right.
John Kerry and President Obama seem intent on just saying, well, we'll slow them down a little bit, and that's enough. It's not enough. We have to guarantee there's never a nuclear Iran.
Now, what did you think about President Obama's telephone call to Bibi, the newly elected again for another term Prime Minister of Israel, where he congratulates him and then chides him on his statement about a dual Palestinian state? What is the deal here?
Well, the president doesn't like to lose, and a lot of his people were on the ground trying to help the opposition to Netanyahu. They, in fact, by interfering in that election, and look, I don't think we should interfere one way or the other. I happen to like Netanyahu, but I have nothing against the other guy. I support Israel, whomever they had elected. That's their decision. But the president's people went in. I don't know if the president ordered them in, but his people went in and worked for the opposition. That pushed Netanyahu to have to make it clear that as long as the current circumstances exist, there won't be a Palestinian state. Well, the president seems to forget that ISIS, the JV team, as he used to call them about a year and 2 months ago, is 18 miles away from the Israeli border. Under those circumstances, under the circumstances that the Palestinians are, at least a large percentage of them are seem to be in favor of terrorist groups. That's why the Prime Minister Netanyahu was forced to make those statements.
Right.
If the president had stayed out of it in the first place, that statement may never have been made.
I think you're right, because Netanyahu had to do something. But now it's like now we're interfering in their political policy and everything else, and I just can't believe. It's amazing to me that there's no criticism by the mainstream media of this. I mean, I looked all through the Sunday, some of the Sunday journals online, the New York Times, LA Times. I didn't find anything on it.
Well, I think that they happen to agree with the president. They all thought that Netanyahu was going to be defeated, and that they could reach a peace accord with everybody in the area. Their idea of a peace accord is Israel surrenders, all kinds of things, and puts themselves into a position of military weakness where they can then, fulfill the wishes of their enemies and be destroyed. I don't think Israel is going to allow that, and they're not going to allow any entity to come in and make it easy for them to destroy Israel. And they realized that was what was on the table, and they decided to put Netanyahu back in. And I think the clear signals coming out of at least the Washington Obama team was that they wanted Netanyahu gone, but because of his weak position worldwide, it actually worked in reverse and helped Netanyahu.
I think that's it. I think it actually backfired with it. Congressman, I want to get to administration overreach again. And in your newsletter that came out earlier in last week, you guys were talking about the Net Neutrality Act. What is having finally had a chance to digest this, what is your take on it, and what happens now?
Well, I think we have to move forward, but I think Congress is going to need to override the so-called net neutrality. It's just a government takeover of the Internet. They'll come in with a bunch of rules. They'll pretend like they're going to be fair, and in the end, the American consumer will lose. And that's what generally happens when the government tries to make things fair. Now, there are times the government has to step in. But in this case, I haven't heard a whole lot of complaints from my constituents about the Internet, other than they can't access it because we don't have enough broadband laid, or we don't have enough wireless signal that's strong enough to get them the Internet. But other than not having access to it, my constituents don't complain about the Internet or not being able to, surf because somebody's doing something inappropriate. Now we're going to have a government agency come in, and they're going to fix the non-problem. And I don't remember Commissioner Pye's quote exactly, but it went something like, we've just come up with a solution that won't work to a problem that doesn't exist with authority that we don't have. And that's pretty close, and he's absolutely right. There's not a problem. They're going to fix the non-problem with a solution that won't work. And then the FCC really doesn't have the authority to do this. Congress is going to have to stand up and be strong. As you know, I keep talking about the Senate filibuster rule, and the reason is that we could pass that thing through the House and through the Senate and put a stop to it fairly quickly, except a modern filibuster rule that allows an anonymous senator of either party to put a hold on a bill, and once that hold's put on it, it takes 60 votes out of 100 just to bring the bill up and start debating it. Absolutely ridiculous and does not follow the principles of a democratic-republican government, but that's where we're at right now. Otherwise, we'd be taking action on that fairly soon.
So there isn't anything that you can do, because what you're saying is you'd have to pass legislation to reverse net neutrality, which at the end of the day was implemented by there's 5 people on the commission, none of them elected by anybody. But you guys know it'll go nowhere, because Harry Reid will cobble together 40 people that will simply, or 41 that will simply block it, and so it just dies.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous.
All your senators.
I mean, 40 senators that stay together in the Senate on the Democratic side basically run America. How does that make any sense?
It doesn't, and they can stop anything. Now, in fairness, the Republicans used to love that rule when they were in the minority. I was against it then, too.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense. People ought to know where their senators stand. The way to do that is to see how they vote. Right now, the Senate doesn't vote on very much. And so people really do need to call their senators, even though they're currently Virginia Democrats. I'm sure you've got some North Carolina voters they could call in.
Sure.
They need to change that rule.
The other overreach situation was on the Second Amendment, and I know that you joined House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte, who was on our show late last week, and more than 230 of your colleagues to send a bipartisan letter to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, basically blasting this attempt to prohibit certain ammo for rifles. Congressman, many of us thought that was a ploy, that basically they thought they could sneak that through, and then after that they would set a precedent to start to ban ammo. They can't take guns away, so they're going to take ammo away. How did you stop it?
Well, we brought enough attention to it. Unfortunately, groups like the NRA and I don't know all the others that got involved, but I know all my friends in the gun groups were highly opposed to it and were writing us, VCDL, some of the other groups here in Virginia. And with our letter, the push, the national attention, the number of comments they got, they realized their efforts to sneak it by. And I agree with you, that's what they were up to. Weren't going to work, and it was going to be a major revolt. And we had Democrat support on that as well. And people were very, very unhappy that when they couldn't ban guns, they were going to turn around and try to ban the ammo for those guns.
Right. I mean, that's
just clearly an overreach and ridiculous.
Congressman, I want to get to this issue with the ABC group. I don't know what you call them, ABC law enforcement organization. We had another very unfortunate incident at the University of Virginia. When you were in the House, you attempted to put them under the jurisdiction of the state police. Now I think Delegate Ben Klein is carrying that. But why do we have ABC agents out there terrorizing students? What's the deal?
Well, and let me make it clear, I just talked to some people. I never actually put a bill in. But I do believe that the ABC needs a new culture. There's some very good ABC officers, but we've seen 2 incidences in Charlottesville, and there are a lot of incidences that I've heard about over the years that have not made the media, where they've just gone a little bit overboard in enforcing the law. And I don't know all the facts in the Charlottesville case, but it appears there was no fake ID. There appears that they didn't see him drinking any alcohol, and the young man ends up with 10 stitches because they smell alcohol in his breath. And apparently there was no forceful resistance, from what I understand. You know, they just need a different culture within the ABC, and I think one of the ways to provide that would be to make them a division of the state police. The state police in Virginia are exceptional. Mm-hmm. They have a great reputation. The culture there is one of, we want to do it the best it can be done. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the right way to go, and that's the best way to get a new culture at the ABC. Because clearly, when they got the situation 2 years ago and they got sued and they had to pay money, they apparently didn't get the message when the same town has the same problem again.
I would say that, and as you said, this is probably just 2 examples that we're aware of. You know, we've heard that there's other examples out there, but I think it's just time for the state of Virginia to rein these people in. I've got a couple more minutes, Congressman. I want to go to the Republican budget that was passed out of the House. We've also got one passed in the Senate. Walk our audience through, right? This is going to get reconciled, but President Obama doesn't have to sign this, right?
That is correct. The budget is a blueprint. Now, it hasn't passed the House yet. It's passed the House committee. Right. Currently sitting in the Rules Committee. We're going to vote on it later this week. And so it's a blueprint of where we want to go. There's some interesting language in it that I'm going to have to take a look at. It's got language that, while not saying specifically what it approves, it says that it approves of the TPA process in there. So there's some language I'm going to have some questions about, see if I can get sorted out. But the budget is something where we can say this is how much we're going to spend, and then all of our appropriations bills have to hit those target numbers, and that makes it a blueprint for what we're going to do the rest of the year. We believe we can get a version passed in both the House and the Senate that are reconciled. That reconciliation will have language. Now, again, it takes bills to back all this up, but it will have language calling on us to repeal Obamacare. So that's language I approve of, and figure out ways that we can get this budget under control. So, you know, it's a very positive first step. Is it perfect? Of course not. But it is a way that we can move forward, and the president does not have to sign it because it's a blueprint of what we're going to do in the future. Right.
So he doesn't have to sign it. He can't veto it. It is what it is. But can he go around it?
Well, if we can't pass bills out of both the House and the Senate that spend money in accordance with what these guidelines set out in the budget bill will do, or the budget resolution will do, the president can use those 40 votes we were talking about just a minute ago in the Senate to block a lot of this. And so that's the way I think that they will approach it, that they will lay in wait, and then when the appropriation comes along, they will block it first in the Senate, and if it gets out of the Senate, then the president will use his veto power. I'm a big believer, though, that we ought to be sending as many bills. We ought to do what we think is right and send as many bills to the president's desk. And if he chooses to veto what the American people have voted for, then he does so to the detriment of his political party.
What about Salvo he fired the other day and said he's going to raise taxes by executive fiat? Basically, that's unconstitutional, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely unconstitutional. And, it was with trial balloon, and I hope it got enough pushback from folks. But if anybody wants to, please email the president. But it should have got enough pushback from folks that they won't actually go there. But and keep in mind, he didn't say it. It was his press secretary or one of his aides that floated that balloon. Again, it's an attempt to see if the American people will accept it. They'll try to get away with it. And every time the president does something that he's not supposed to, we move one step closer to a tyranny down the road somewhere.
You got that right. We're out of time. I want to thank Congressman Morgan Griffith for being with us. You can go to griffith.house.gov. Thanks, Congressman.